If you've spent any time online at all lately, you've seen it everywhere, right? The endless hype around side hustles. All these promises of easy money, passive income, escaping your 9 to 5. And look, it's a really compelling story, but it's not the whole story. And for most of us, for working professionals, it's actually just a recipe for burnout. So let's get into it and uncover the truth.
And see, this is the part that nobody ever talks about. The failure isn't some big, loud, dramatic explosion. It's quiet. People just stop. The website goes dark, that social media account just goes inactive, the whole dream just kind of fizzles out. And it's happening because there's this huge gap between the fantasy being sold online and the actual reality of a professional's life.
Here's the problem in a nutshell. There is a massive disconnect. The internet is selling this simple, shiny fantasy. It's easy, it's passive, it's quick. But for a professional who already has a demanding career, the reality is that a side hustle isn't just a simple addition to your life. No, it's a competitor. It's competing for your most limited, most valuable resources, your time, your focus, and maybe most importantly, your energy.
Okay, so the very first thing we have to do here is really dismantle this fantasy. We need to understand why the kind of advice that might work for, say, a college student with endless free time is actually terrible advice for someone who's already managing a full-blown career.
The one factor that almost everyone overlooks, it's energy. Think about it. A side hustle that drains you so much that your performance at your main job starts to suffer? Well, that's not a smart move. That's a high-risk gamble. And the online gurus, they almost never, ever talk about this hidden cost. All right, now let's tackle the biggest lies of them all. I'm talking about the ones about the actual work involved, because these are the myths that cause the most frustration and ultimately the most burnout.
You hear this all the time, don't you? Oh, it's so easy to start, or anyone can do this. But here's the thing. Side hustles aren't hard because they're necessarily super complex technically. They're hard because they have to somehow fit into a life that's already full.
And this means we're all asking the wrong question. We need to just forget easy. That's not the goal. The real question, the right metric is this sustainable? Can I realistically do this for a year without burning out or messing up my job and my life? See, sustainability, that's the true measure of success.
Ah, yes, passive income. The holy grail, right? This dream of making money while you sleep. I swear, it has got to be one of the most abused and misleading phrases on the entire internet. The reality of passive income looks a lot more like this. First, there's always a massive, upfront, active work phase. Then, after all that, there's the ongoing maintenance and optimization just to keep the whole thing running. And only after all of that do you get something that is, at best, semi-passive. It is never, ever a set-it-and-forget-it deal. And then there's this one. Just be consistent, they say, and the results will come. But this advice is so dangerously incomplete because it completely ignores the reality of timelines. It just sets people up for this immense frustration when they put in all the work but see absolutely no reward right away.
The truth? Many of these projects have incredibly long feedback loops. You can do everything right for months and see almost nothing in return. And those overnight success stories you read about, they almost always leave out the years of grinding it out with zero results. They just compress all that struggle into a single sentence.
Okay, so the next big lie. This one's a little different. It's not about the hustle itself. It's actually about you. It's this dangerous idea that some one-size-fits-all blueprint can actually work for everyone.
The internet tries to sell you this universal, cookie-cutter blueprint, but your reality is completely unique. The demands of your job, your natural energy cycles throughout the day, your personality, all these things matter way more than any generic tactic. A side hustle has to fit your life, not the other way around. And this is exactly why that classic advice to follow your passion can be such a trap. Look, passion's an emotion. It comes and it goes. A much more powerful, more reliable strategy is to build for alignment. Does this thing fit your skills? Does it align with your actual schedule? Does it match your long-term goals? Okay, listen up, because this next part is absolutely critical for anyone with a career that they actually value. We have to talk about risk, because the internet gets this one completely wrong.
You know when you hear low risk, right? 9 times out of 10, they're just talking about money. They'll say something like, hey, what have you got to lose? It only costs a few bucks to start a website. But this completely misses the biggest risks of all.
Because for a professional, for you, risk is a whole different ballgame. It's so much more than the startup cost. It's any negative consequence that could ripple back and affect the career you've worked so hard to build.
These are the real risks we need to be thinking about. The risk of losing your personal life, right? The risk of your performance slipping at work because you're exhausted. The risk of attaching your professional name to a project that fails or just looks unprofessional. And maybe the biggest one, the risk of diluting your focus away from your main career path.
And that brings us to the real goal here. So much of the side hustle content online frames your job as this prison that you need to escape from. But that just creates all this unnecessary pressure. A much healthier and frankly, more strategic mindset is to see a side hustle as a way to build your options, not as some desperate escape hatch.
So after tearing down all of those myths, where does that actually leave us? Well, let's talk about a better way forward. Let's talk about a realistic framework that's designed specifically for professionals like us.
Look, the last thing you need is another guru yelling at you to just hustle harder. What you actually need is a smarter way to think about this. A framework that acknowledges your reality and works with your constraints, not against them.
And it all comes down to this simple three-step framework. First, you have to prioritize sustainability. Before you even start, you've got to ask, can I manage this long-term without burning out? If the answer is no, it's the wrong project. Simple as that. Second, redefine what risk really means to you. Actively protect your career, your energy, and your reputation above all else. Those are your most valuable assets. And third, build for alignment. Make sure it fits your life, your skills, and your schedule right now, not for some fantasy version of your life where you magically have endless free time.
You know, in the end, the real path to success with a side hustle isn't loud, it's not flashy, and it's definitely not fast. It's a much quieter, more thoughtful and strategic process. It might not make for a great viral video, but it's infinitely more likely to actually work for you.
So I want to leave you with this. The point of all this was never to just add more stress to your life or to work yourself into the ground. The real point is to strategically and sustainably build options for your future. So the only question left is, what options are you building?